Actually, I want to start the full review of the all-new Mercedes G-Class calm and collected. But then I saw this. Sorry, I really had to do it, but I hope you enjoyed it. So, this is it. The G500 and the G63, because we asked you before, which version of the all-new Mercedes G-Class do you want to see? And well, a lot of you guys said this one, a lot of you guys said that one, and I said, well, then we have to do both. In exterior, interior, and the driving experience, on-road and off-road. In full HD, full screen and full length. Let's go! Let's start you with the front with the G500 in Thomas Blue, as I call this color. So my favorite. Is it also yours? Leave me your comments. Well, they have definitely kept this characteristic shape of the G-Class. Yes, it is a little bit more round than before in some elements, but in the very front, still this very massive front grille. You can also now have this full LED headlamps, and the turning indicator lamps, they have remained the same, that they stand out right here, also one of the key elements of the G-Class. Interesting is, usually manufacturers say, oh, we have all new, but in reality it's just a facelift. Here it's the other way around. So many parts of this car are really new, but then for the officials, you know, for regulations and stuff, they say, oh, you know, just a product update, because then they could keep this front, which is basically catastrophic for pedestrian safety. But if they would have registered that as an all-new vehicle now, probably regulations would have said, no, sorry, that's not allowed. Interesting background fact here for you. Let's check out how the G63 looks in the front. The G-Class is built by Magna Steyr in Austria, so they are doing it for Mercedes. It's the same with the predecessor. Here now with the new generation, 55% stiffer chassis, both for G500 and G63, and 170 kilograms of weight savings, because the front hood, for example, the mud guards and also the doors are from aluminum. And here with the G63 you could see the difference. First of all, it's a little bit lower than the G500, also then less off-road capable, and the front grille has those rather, you know, more sexy vertical fins right there. Looks a little bit stronger, and with the AMG logo. Here then with the color in a matte silver or matte gray. Which one do you like better? 4 meters 82 or 15'8" is the total length of the new G-Class. That's about 5 centimeters, just a little bit longer than the previous generation. But on the interior, more will have changed. I will soon show you that. Well, but here for the exterior, it has also remained this shape where it's just upright right there. Also with those door handles with a classic door closing sound. If you do not know the G-Class, you would probably say, hey, that's a 50-year-old car, how does that sound? And I mean, what the hell? But that's the sound that true G-Class customer really want to have, otherwise they probably would not buy the car anymore. What has changed, that you have the side mirror caps here, they are now round. It does not fit the vehicle very well, but probably it is better also, you know, for the wind features and for all the technology you have to put inside. If you want the blind spot monitor and so on, you also have to store some electronics in there. 20-inch rims we have mounted here, pretty massive in a two-color scheme already. And then some chrome at the lower step here. You can step on the car pretty easily like this. Yeah. Then those details are really fun with this vehicle for sure. To the rear, where you also have the same door closing sound. Here we go. And then this broad shoulder line, a little bit more inward in this case. This will cost us some trunk space on the interior. I will soon show you that. But definitely overall, square dimensions, that's what the G-Class is for, definitely. So we got some off-road dish surrounding here already for you, and talking about that, well, 27 centimeters of ground clearance for the G500, and also the approaching angles are quite high, 30 degrees in the front and 31 degrees from the rear, so you can literally get anywhere with this vehicle. That's still true. The design has just changed a little bit, for example with those tail lights, but overall, again, with the replacement tire over here. That's the reason also why the rear door opens in this side way. We know that from all the cars that have this one applied. Soon we'll also take a look inside how much space you really have. And should you want to go in a deep water hole, deeper than the one we've shown you initially, is about 70 centimeters of wading depth. And that's really a lot. So but probably most of the time these situations will not happen. So, well, we haven't seen the exhaust here on the G500. The reason is it's basically hidden a little bit underneath the car, just at the side, on the right side, just in the middle underneath the car. So we'll be able to see that one with the G63 better. So this is a side profile of the G63 AMG, and you can see we have 22-inch rims, so the biggest one that are available. Here also with a red stripe, you do not have to get it. It's another design feature here also at the side mirror caps right there. With a gray tone, you can also see the more contrasting, well, it is basically a protection strip going right here over the vehicle. Of course, when you have a darker tone of the vehicle color, it's not that prominent. Here, if you have a brighter tone, then you can really see it again with the plain plastic door handles as we used to from the very first G-Class as well. A little bit wider here also with the mudguards. Other than that, you can see that the G500 and G63 are not too different from the exterior. Of course, a little bit lower here, as you can see it once more again. Maybe scroll back again to the G500 to really compare what it's like and to find your favorite. So the most special thing, however, in the side profile for the G63 are those exhaust tips that come out from the side. And the even funnier thing is, that's not only on this side, but on both sides. And for the rear, well, this is the position where both vehicles actually look most similar. It's just great to always be able to show you different colors. I like when we can actually do that. Well, usually we have like big diffuser, big exhaust in the rear then for sports cars or those AMG versions. But I've shown you that's happening at the side profile here. And by the way, we're having really a hard time today with a lot of wind and different terrain for the camera position. So if you appreciate our effort to show you both vehicles, actually hit the thumbs up, share the video, tell your friends to watch Autogefuehl as well. That's, always helping us, of course, when you are supporting us. Looking at both engines, first of all, lucky we have those hydraulic struts that we don't have to push them open. Well, the G500 and the G63 both share the same hardware somewhat with a 4-liter V8. And that's basically new, especially for the G63. The difference is this one here is a stock engine built in Stuttgart at the Mercedes plant. And this one then is the one-man, one-engine, hand-built AMG engine made in Falterbach at the AMG manufacturing. Well, so On the one hand, it's the same. On the other hand, it's different in the building style a little bit. You can see it who built it as well. And of course in the horsepower tune as well. So whereas we have 422 horsepower here, we have 585 horsepower there with the G63. Well, in acceleration wise, it does make just about 1.5 seconds of a difference, because we have for the G500 5.9 seconds, whereas we have 4.5 seconds for the G63 to 100 kilometers or 62 miles an hour. Well, if you then think about you have to pay about 100,000 at least for this and about 200,000 for this, then you can say, you know, 1.5 seconds is not much of a difference. But then again, if you go for G63, money doesn't play a role anyway. And the overdrive distribution here for the G63 is 40-60, 40 in the front, 60% in the rear. So you also have a rear wheel bias. Still, of course, a permanent all-wheel drive. But you lose some ground clearance, so for more off-roading, the G500 is surely the better pick. This is the vehicle key you get, pretty light and also slim. And well, one downside of those classic doors are sometimes you say they're closed and then they may be like this, but you really have to slam them. That's one secret goal here for the G500 both and the G63. So here you are allowed to slam doors. Then inside, this is where the real revolution takes place. Soft touch material on the top part here. Then also a straight horizontal layout here with the optional Burmester sound system. The seat you can control right here. Also for the head restraint, for example. Seat heating available and also seat cooling. And then, wow, here we go. So this has really changed a lot if you compare it to the previous generation. You have this rather sporty steering wheel. The Distronic is now at the steering wheel, the adaptive cruise control. It's not with a separate column right here, but there's a separate column for moving the steering wheel up and down, and also inward and towards you. Then also interesting wrap around the dashboard right there with contrast stitches. All digital instruments. You can also see soon more deals to that. To the seats, this one here, G500 standard seat, but it's already pretty sporty with those side bolsters right there. You can also adjust them if you want so. This one here also with the contrast black and white. Unfortunately, they do not offer yet any alternatives to animal skin. You have to ask for that for an individual program so far. And now getting inside, and it's really interesting because you can step inside really. Well, that is always fun with this vehicle, and this upright seating position is not only SUV-ish, it is really off-road-ish. That means you have even more this style that you are on top of the road, that you are the king. Also looking down on the hood and those turning indicators, pretty interesting. I'm 1.86 m or 6'1", and we have a panoramic roof installed, and I don't even have to talk about headroom here. Is absolutely no problem. Also with the new generation you have more room here in the front. 4 centimeters more legroom, 6 centimeters more of shoulder space. So it's definitely more spacious. I mean, told you earlier, 12 centimeters wider the overall car. Definitely a feeling where you can say, yeah, I could have some longer road trips here. Also from the first seating position, it's actually quite good because it's all upright. If those seats will really give you some that much comfort, we'll test also when we drive the vehicle. Again, as I said earlier, I can also adjust the steering wheel here and then electrically the seat, also with the lower part for the legs if you're a little bit taller. So I think this seating position is also one of the main reasons why people say, let's go for a G-Class. It is somewhat cool and controlled. And here we go with that interior overview, horizontal stress here with the contrast stitches, the panic handle for the co-driver. You need it when driving off-road, for example. It comes pretty handy. Then this modern steering wheel that looks just normal Mercedes passenger car-like. Right side the wheel for the volume, for example. The digital screen goes all the way through. Two big screens that basically form one visual unit. And then with the thumbs you can control the right side here, and with the left thumb you can control the left screen. But it's also still possible to use the central controller here in the lower part, for example. And then in the middle part is also pretty interesting in the top part for the three differentials, front, rear and the center differential. If you want to use them more off-road driving, then those turbine vents right there. Still classic Mercedes climate unit to control it just manual while driving, analog clock in the lower part, and then two adaptive cup holders. In the lower part you can put the key, and with the armrest here it slides up in a two split, and then you can charge your phone there. Either you just the USB charging function, a normal one, or the connection for the smartphone interface when you want to use Apple CarPlay and stuff. So for the instruments, you can change around the stuff here. You can have GPS view right there, radio, phone function. You can also change to different styles. For example, also to a sportier style like this, or so-called progressive. This one would be my favorite, I think. And digital speed in the middle. But then you can have really a lot of features right there. But if you don't like this fancy stuff, they are still optional. You can still get analog instruments, and for this car maybe it's also more fitting then. So for the right side here, as I said, you can use your thumb, and here also have the function that you use the thumb at the steering wheel and then you can zoom in and out. I like that. It was different with the all-new Mercedes A-Class, for example, but here you also do not have a touchscreen, for example. Also the lower controls still work, and you have the standard menu right there. Here we go. We can also switch it around. Telephone either via Bluetooth or then again with the Apple CarPlay if you put in the cable. And you have this connect function right there, and then you can choose the Apple CarPlay, for example. Rather the classic Mercedes system, great in style. The GPS sometimes misleads us a little bit, so I'm not super happy with it. But overall the system, I think, offers everything you want to have besides the touchscreen maybe. Light options, for example, you can also switch around the ambient light right there. So many different colors. This is also one thing you can play around with. So the rear passengers, the door does not open that wide, but you have the same cool collected style also for the rear seats. And when we get inside, it's always good to use the handles here on the top part as well, and the lower footstep. And now 15 centimeters more legroom than in the previous generation. So even if the tall driver, as me, are driving in the front, you're actually quite okay with the legroom. So it's still not a good package. We have way smaller cars that have the same legroom, so they do not use the room you have very well. But a big step forward if you compare it to the previous generation. Now we can comfortably sit here also with 4 adults. Headroom-wise in the rear is actually, I don't have to talk about that either. So, well, the rear bench part goes a little bit backwards, but overall it's pretty cool to sit here in the rear too, because you also sit so upright. You can also change the rear part of the seat to be more upright or to be more in a sleeping position. And very interesting, I'm so sorry I missed that one at the G63 world premiere in Geneva. Well, yeah, I'm not perfect either. So, whoa, that was closing opening the car because I had the key in my pocket. Interesting. So if you now pull this strap here in the lower part, here at the side, I really want to do it from here now, because then you can actually see that. Usually you would do it from the position you are standing now, but then I would be blocking the view for you. So here we go, then we can fold up the lower part, and then when we flip this one here, also move down the head restraints. And yes, I'm using this microphone here because it gives you better sound quality and it's very windy outside. But you can hear that now with this superb microphone then. Harder for me then, but it's not depending on what's hard for me. It's what's better for you. So, for all flat then here from the rear bench, that comes quite handy. And we'll also take a look how that one looks like from the trunk. So, it opens sideways, as I've told you earlier. And, well, to put it through again, you have some hydraulic strut, but you do need some power also for the other doors. When it's then also windy, it sometimes can be a problem if you're not too strong. Then to put a cabin trolley here inside to show how much room we have. And well, actually this is somewhat a disappointment because the car is so big and it's not so much trunk space left here. Not in the length and also not in the width. So you can see, cabin trolley wise, you can fit two next to each other, for example. That's possible. But in length, you know, if you have luggage for two people, that does fit. But you have to work around a little bit then if you want to access one of those. So if you then compare, for example, a Mercedes GLE or a GLS, you're actually easier off trunk-wise than with those standard SUVs. Because, you know, this space here, or you do lose that, you do not have that one available. Then there's a small step then. There's, you know, another bag where they also have stored some nets. Then you have to step up further to the bench where you can then load things through. Here the top part, you have a cover. You can easily slide it back again if you want. Interior of the G63 AMG with the logo here on the key. The basic key is the same. And you have another AMG logo on the back part. Then let's get inside and we can see we have a different style. Here with a red styling for this carbon fiber red decor elements. Also with a lot of red contour stitching and this quilting structure too. We can find it either at the inside of the doors, right there, this quilted structure, and also on the seats, those sport seats with stronger side support. And well, this structure here, it looks cool, but I can tell you always when I'm sitting on those structures for a longer time, I do not recommend. It's better when you don't have this structure than for the long-term comfort. Steering wheel here, the special AMG steering wheel, perforated sides, flat bottom from the side view already. You can already take a look at the digital instruments from there. We'll soon give you another look from the interior overview. You can see both also again similar, but here a little bit more stressed for the AMG racing style. In the interior overview, we can see that in the G63 we have some changes. Here we have the red racing style, also this carbon red structure we also had at the top of the panic handle. Also with the different steering wheel, with the flat and bottom AMG steering wheel, we've also seen in other vehicles, red contour stitches in 12 o'clock position right here in the top. Also those digital gauges in the front have the AMG style with more information about what's going on in the vehicle. And also with the rear, same styling as in the front, nice AMG entry plates, they're illuminated as well. And when I get in here, it's again the same than in the normal one, same legroom and stuff. So sometimes the sporty AMG versions are less comfortable than the normal ones, but here you cannot necessarily say that. And I mean, you still have this off-road monster here. A little bit less off-roadish for sure in the G63, but if you want to use it more for road driving, it will probably give you some more stability. Will it? I think we should explore that also soon in the driving part. Now to the driving part, G500. We're starting in a little roundabout. Because one of the things they promised with this new generation is that it's more agile to drive. Although it still looks this off-roadish and... I think indeed it works. So it feels actually quite sporty, sportier than it looks like. They also fixed the steering, so it's a little bit more progressive, but you've seen in the roundabout, I still do have to steer a lot, and the reason for that is that the off-road character of this vehicle still has, supposed to remain the same somehow. And in off-road vehicles you have to steer a little bit more, that when you're going off-road and something is changing on the surface, the steering wheel is not like turned totally, upside down and maybe your fingers get ripped apart or something. So Yes, it's a little bit more agile to drive and the steering is a little bit more responsive, but it's not as responsive as in those, for example, Mercedes GLE, big Mercedes SUV. And if you're thinking about going for a standard big Mercedes SUV like a GLE or a GLS or this one here, the G-Class, I will also give you some hints throughout this driving review of what's really different. You here actually also not only see that the front windscreen is still really upright, and this is creating more wind noise than you would have with a flatter windscreen. The wind noise is a little bit less than in the previous generation. They have also improved the noise insulation. However, you can't just deny the building style of the car. You still hear that. It is somewhat windy today outside, but still we're driving 90 kilometers an hour and it is more windy just from the noise than you would hear that in a respective SUV from Mercedes lineup, definitely. However, from the road noise, also from the engine noise, you don't hear too much actually, especially when you're just letting it roll. The one thing that customers of this car appreciate the most is this command driving position, which is even more enhanced than in another normal street style SUV. You really sit, one step further ahead, and the hood is quite low. So considering this is a big car, you can still see very well where the hood is ending because you're really sitting above it. And that's for sure a funny feeling. So this is something very unique you hardly have in any other vehicle today on the road, that you still have this very rough, robust feeling and you think you are above all things. This definitely belongs to the concept of this vehicle. So here on the motorway, you can also then test the assistance systems. This is also one of the major upgrades here. We have a blind spot monitor. Well, no one's gonna overtake us now, but there will be a triangle in the left mirror. There's also the Distronic, the adaptive cruise control. You can set it here now with the directly at the steering wheel, not with a separate column. And then you can, for example, just have a normal cruise control or also an adaptive one. You can choose that. In this case, I can also control the distance to the car in front of me, like this, and then I can basically just relax on throttle and brakes, and that's it. So we're starting here with some Motorway to give you some features of those, and then I'll soon head on to some more agile roads. Very interesting, by the way. Now we're basically in the wind shadow of this truck in front of us, and suddenly it's super silent in here. And usually you don't hear that in normal cars. But since the wind noise due to the upright windshield is pretty much present, now it's basically very much blocked. That's a very interesting thing. That's, as soon as the truck will be gone, let's see if we can experience something else then. Here, by the way, it's about 80 kilometers an hour. The car, considering it's that high, is still really stable. It's not tilting too much. Although we have a lot of spring way, especially, whoa. That trailer goes a little sideways there. Maybe want to do some action for us sliding the trailer out or something. So this is something they managed here very well, that the car is still somewhat stable. However, if you really steer it up and let it shake, it is still possible. You feel this rather soft off-road suspension, and then the car is going like this. This is somehow fun to drive, and again defining also the character of this vehicle. So let's also see if we can overtake it. We can choose different driving modes. For example, in the sport mode, the gears are turned up higher, and then we can accelerate out this car a little bit better. Consumption-wise, I'm not sure if you will be interested when you're driving this car, but when I've just been cruising about 12 liters, even above that, and when I'm going to accelerate some more, probably this will go up even more. Mercedes claims that they have also improved the consumption, but usually that only happens on paper. Yes, the car is a little bit lighter than before in the previous generation. Chassis about 55% stiffer. So you feel that plus of agility, yes, but it will not really improve the consumption. So you have to live with a high consumption when you drive this car, for sure. There is also an eco mode, by the way, where the RPMs go just a little bit lower, for example. Throttle input is being reduced. And also, you can let the car sail. That is possible. You can try it, when you want to save some fuel, but in most cases it won't have such a big effect. Other than that, by the way, the total overview, not only to the front, to the sides, as this car has really those square dimensions, you can really very well see where this car is ending. So this would be one of the big luxury cars where I would say I could also live without 360-degree surround camera and stuff. This would be okay, as you can really see what's happening around the car. That's actually quite nice and good for this rather old building style. So, sport mode, and let me just slow down just a little bit. We go for example, from 40 kilometers an hour. And let's see how this acceleration here turns out. And also what the sound is giving us then here in the G500. So let those vehicles pass, and let's go. Plop. That is 100. So it's really hard to imagine that such a tank can still accelerate that hard. Also quite nice sound here from the V8, very sonorous, not too loud, because everything is very well insulated. And that's quite fun. So very sovereign, of course, with the V8, a lot of displacement there, and the all-wheel drive. That is what you get then from those rather classic big old engines. And now when the truck is gone in front of us with 90 kilometers an hour again, you hear the wind noise once more. One thing I was looking out to was also the suspension, because in the front you have an independent suspension, but in the rear you still have this rigid axle, which is rather set up for example, heavy load or in the off-road driving and stuff. And this is the rather old construction, so to say. Of course, everything has been replaced, updated, and so on, and you do feel that. So, whereas in the old G-Class you had some less comfort suspension-wise, they improved it here now. So, if you now think about getting one of those classic SUVs because you say you appreciate the comfort, from a great GLE air suspension or something, I think the riding comfort here is already quite good. And one of the reasons is also that the softness of the suspension is still set on this off-road mode. The thing I said earlier with the tilting, that you can shake up the car like this if you really want so, but only if you really force it. And that also gives you this still comfortable riding feel. So I was expecting it to be harsher, especially from the rear axle. I'll also update you when we get some more road input there, when we have, for example, a little bit more uneven road. That will be very interesting. And of course, from the off-road track that is coming up very soon as well, because that is also very interesting how the car performs there. By the way, in the corners, I also get a little bit help from the side bolsters of the seats. We know the system from Mercedes already. When you turn to the right or to the left, and your body's going to the right, for example, the right bolster is being stiffened, that you get held tight in the seat. It's a pretty cool system, especially also for the co-driver, because the co-driver cannot hold on to the steering wheel. So, then if you ask me again, unique driving feature of this car, For sure, the very upright command seating position, this off-road, rough feeling, I'm king of the road, nothing can harm me, even not pedestrians. Yeah, you got that. Then, of course, the pure power from this V8, already here in the G500, so more power than in the previous generation and less difference to the G63, if you just want to have a G500. Suspension-wise, big upgrade from the previous generation. It's now more comfortable, and you don't have to have a compromise there and say, yeah, you know, you go with a rough off-roadish version and then you have less comfort. It's really comfortable also for long-term runs. But, and that's probably the biggest downside for driving this vehicle, especially on the motorway, it is very loud for Mercedes. We always have to think about very high level at Mercedes, high level of goodness in the noise insulation, so a low level of noise. And this is actually the biggest difference when you think about driving a GLE or a GLS at 100. You would not feel that at all. And that's just the building style. If you look at it from the outside and say, this very upright windscreen and this boxy style of the car, that is so cool, then you have to live with the rather big noise here, the big wind noise in the interior when you have this motorway driving. That's probably the biggest downside of this car. But the interesting thing is that although it is still this rough off-roader, everything else Mercedes has basically taken care of, that you can still have this, this still the same feeling of driving a 50-year-old car or looking at it. It's like a little bit like driving a vintage car from the feeling, but at the same time, all of the systems here, screens, automatic transmission, which works perfectly, very smooth as well, and all of the commands and driving it, then it's like a super modern car. So, and I think this combination is also something where a lot of people look out for, because maybe not everyone wants to drive a vintage car and have repairs all day and stuff, and no assist in the steering wheel. But this one is really a modern vintage car, a vintage car popped up. So style still vintage, but everything else technology-wise really changed. And I think driving again confirms that this is basically an all-new car on the one hand, and the reason they didn't say actually in front of the all the official sites and regulations that it's just an update, was just for the front hood, that they could actually keep that way, as I said earlier. So, and to close up this review with some fun part, let's drive it a little bit more around the corners, because again, this agile part is also one thing they've upgraded pretty much. So, feeling pretty safe, although it's high in the car, and it's actually a very cool cruiser. But again, I would not take it for very high speeds runs. Maybe just for relaxed trips in the countryside, and then have maybe a picnic there on the rear trunk or something like that. And probably that's also the reason why you often see this car here in the city, even although it does not really belong in the city. But at low speeds you don't hear anything from the wind noise. It's pretty interesting. Pretty nice also from the V8. You could always shift down here with the pedals. Have this growl, but it's not really exaggerated. So that's also one difference than G500, G63. G63 is just louder, and this one here with the G500, you say, yeah, this is totally enough for me. I don't have to say, hey everyone, listen up, I'm driving a G-Class. This is here rather just, hey look everyone, I'm driving a G-Class. So because looking here, small French city, driving here near Perpignan, really down in the south of France. I mean, if you drive with a G-Class through this small valley and there's someone that's looking like, So it does not really fit to this surrounding, but it's still somehow fun to drive through it. It's, you know, quite often the case that you have a different perspective when you look at it from the outside and when you're sitting inside the car. Because here again, I can, I'm almost sitting like I would be like on the first floor in some of those buildings here and looking down to the street. And then, you know, what does this shop here offer? This is really, really funny stuff. Look at those, you know, on the right side, those barriers. When you have the normal passenger car, it's really like this barrier is, you know, almost above your head. And when I'm here, like this barrier is maybe just in front of my belly. That's really funny. Have you seen that, by the way? So the start-stop was activated as soon as I released it, because the car also has so much power. It really had a hop forward. Well, those start-stop systems, they are not always saving this much fuel. It's more like a system which saves fuel on paper. So sometimes I also just deactivate it. I mean, it's really the question if it really makes sense with this V8. So if we had one acceleration in there now, we're already at 14 liters on 100 kilometers consumption. So yeah, that's really something. And I have to say, then if you think about a GLE or a GLS, you can drive those definitely more efficient. So this is also, again, one more aspect where you still feel the difference then to those modern city SUVs and this here. Well, I do compare it to those Mercedes SUVs because there's hardly anything you can compare it outside then. There are no real competitors which still are in this rough off-roader segment from this rather old building style. You know, just maybe in the non-premium segment, if you think about the Mitsubishi Pajero maybe, where you can get 2 or 3 Pajeros for the price of this one here. Then again, even the Pajero is running out. And well, if you think Land Rover side, the Defender is way smaller and also totally different price region, so it's hard really to compare something to it. Toyota Land Cruiser is also cheaper, more off-roadish, so this really stands out for its own, and I think this is still one of the reasons why so many people go for it. Wow, really sovereign acceleration here. That is something which is definitely a lot of fun. However, I would have expected the V8 to be a little bit more fuel saving, because sometimes we test bigger engines which are, you know, which are lower in the consumption than the smaller engines, because you can run them at lower RPMs and stuff. But then again, the weight, you cannot deny the weight of this car, and you also cannot deny that the wind features which you literally hear is not really optimized for consumption and stuff. So let's turn here. See how I have to turn the steering wheel quite a lot. Again, still an off-road-ish steering, although it's very light and soft to steer. Now we're getting some bumps. Wow. Yeah, okay. That was quite rough, because the roads are actually quite good here. But when you get to some bumps, then you feel the stiffer rear axles, so that is also a difference then to some of those very modern air suspensions. Let's once more get to the sport mode. Here we go. Oh, very smooth from this 9G automatic transmission, really a fan of it. Shifting back, RPMs turn up. One more on the throttle. Whoa. That was the automatic brake, which is also standard equipment. It basically preheated my brake. But you can see when this upright cupboard is approaching you in the rear mirror, I think I've never experienced that on the French roads. Usually I just go with a very small Renault Clio and just race even faster than you would be allowed to. But here in this case I say, what the hell is approaching there from behind? Better get off the road, this crazy guy is running me down, something like that, you know. Let's see, I think if we go left now. So I do have to force this vehicle in the corners just a little bit, also due to the steering. What about Katrina, co-driver today? How are you feeling when I'm driving this car a little bit faster? Is it still comfortable as a co-driver, or is it like, yeah? Because you know, so you're fine with it also. You know, relaxed also when I'm driving faster. So she's relaxed also when I'm driving fast. That's of course a good sign. To me as a driver, when I'm pushing the limits here now a little bit more, I think the steering could be more progressive. So if you not think about the off-road character of this car and think more in road driving, then it would be better if the steering would help me a little bit more with being more progressive, that I don't have to steer so much. And of course, tilting of the car, sometimes hopping from the suspension. So it is okay somewhat, and also definitely better than the previous generation, but I would not say that driving the G500 here would be super fun in agile driving corners. So sometimes, you know, just for a little bit you can certainly do that and you have enough power, but from the characteristics, I mean, the car is just too high for that basically. And of course I'm looking forward if that is different in the G63. Now to driving the G63 AMG, and just to show you that the rear view camera, by the way, is really cool. You can see it right there, great resolution, and you also have this fake drone view from above on the left hand side, even when someone is walking by. Pretty interesting, right, isn't it? So, and what I also have here with the AMG is that you have, for example, those performance mounts. Then you can see the Newton meters of torque or the kilowatts. I mean, you shouldn't look at it while driving anyway, but it's maybe a nice show off then for the co-driver, for example. Well, you feel directly that the suspension is stiffer here. No wonder that they did that in the AMG version. That reduces the tilting to the left and the right. So, and that's also better than for a little sportier driving. And well, we have about 150 horsepower more. Let's see if we can realize that. The G500 was already fast for sure. What I really like is this steering wheel. It feels sportier, also behaves a little bit sportier. You can better grab it. Easier also to steer a little bit. So I would actually prefer this steering wheel. And you feel that the characteristic of the engine is also a little bit different. When I'm just in the comfort mode here, it feels a little bit like the other one, the G500, would be in the sport mode. That's pretty interesting. And well, what you can maybe also see on camera is that it's a little bit shakier, maybe because the suspension is stiffer, so when the road is uneven, you also feel it a little bit more. It's not that both vehicles would feel like total different vehicles, but again, the suspension, you can feel it. Also, we have here 22-inch rims instead of 20-inch rims, which we had with the G500, and that's also a difference. You know, when the wheels are bigger, it gets a little stiffer. Here, when you're going some right and left, very good control over the car. Again, for road driving, it would be cooler if you would have a little bit more progression in the steering, that you have to steer less. However, then when we later go off-road driving, then again, that's an advantage. So when you're going over some transverse bumps, especially at normal road speed, then you feel that the suspension is stiffer, first of all, and in general also, if you compare an AMG version of one of the other normal city street driving SUVs, that's then more comfortable with those than with this rather rough AMG version. So let me switch over to the GPS so that I can see where I'm actually driving. So here we go. And on the right side we can see then always the closed junction. On the left side we rather have the overview. And it's a little bit loudy from the suspension, from the vents in the rear. Sometimes I turn the vents in the rear down a little bit. So let's go to the sport mode here and give you some acceleration on that road here. So, all ready, and let's go. That's 100. Ooh. So that is some difference. I mean, the felt difference is even bigger because of the sound this V8 is giving you. So the AMG sound here is definitely in another league than with the G500. And this 1.5 second that this car is... What the... Yeah, okay, that happened. So this 1.5 second that this car is actually faster than the other one, yeah, you do feel that. Although the other one was already quite fast. So I think everyone should be awake now, right? Okay, not too good for cameraman, I guess. So I can always hold onto the steering wheel and I know exactly when the acceleration is happening. So that's definitely an advantage. So now back to cruising a little bit. And you can go to the normal driving mode. By the way, with the G500, in the end, when I really tried to save fuel, I end up with 12 liters on 100 kilometers, and it's not possible to go below that. And I think sometimes rather something 14 is even more realistic. Now, here for example at 100, you see you get more stability. If I would try to shake up the car like this, the G500 started to tilt then a little bit. This is less with this car, so less tilting, stiffer suspension. The question is then if you know what you actually prefer. So if you want it a little bit sportier, less rolling, less tilting, then the G63 will help you. If you drive somewhere where you have a lot of bumps in the road, or they are rather damaged, then the G500 will help you a little bit more. Soon also while our off-road driving, we'll check out the suspension and steering in there, how that one plays off, because with this vehicle you always need to find a compromise between road and off-road driving, as it's still thought out to be also like a still an off-road vehicle car. And I also know that some even go to the dunes or something, even with the G63. Well, the thing is that the approaching angle is of course different. So in the front and the rear, and because of the lower bumpers and stuff, suspension itself is then stiffer too. So for off-road, definitely the G500. That's why we are soon in the off-road part will also concentrate on the G500. But here on the road with the G63, I feel better in those winding roads now. With the G500, I had the feeling that I had to fight the car a little bit because of the weight, the steering that I had to work a little bit more with. Not necessarily because the steering is hard to control, but it feels like the car would be lagging behind a little bit then in the corners. And the 63 here is not really lagging behind in the corners. So I have to say, for driving on road, it feels definitely better, because it evens out the disadvantage of this car, that it's still very heavy. That for road driving it's so high and has also with the center of gravity and stuff, it starts rolling and tilting. So you even that out with the AMG version. So in a way this can also make sense. Sound wise, of course, if you like this rather growling AMG sound, that would be an advantage for you. Other than that, of course, if you want to save money, you go for the G500. But that shouldn't be playing any role if you go for the G63. So again, this dynamic road driving is not only more fun, not only sporty, but also somehow just more pleasant with this one here. So it's a funny thing that you can increase also the comfort with making a car stiffer. That's at least that's how I feel. What's about co-driving? So you prefer the G500? Okay. So obviously for co-driver, the G500 is better because it's softer. Well, I mean, it's always some kind of personal preference, but I mean, AMG vehicles are definitely driver's cars, and probably you also now know why they're called driver's car, because they're better for the driver. not necessarily better for the co-driver, especially acceleration-wise. So always fun to use the shifting pedals here also. Click, click, click. So we go right, and we can push the sound a little bit further as well. That's also possible just when you are in the comfort mode and you want to do some overtaking maneuver. Just use the shifting pedal, shift back one gear, and then you have this growling sound again. You remember the pipes, 2 pipes on the right, 2 pipes on the left as well. Another good setup here for those winding turns. Really good to enjoy also with the camera here in the front. By the way, which one or which perspective do you prefer? We cannot always mount the camera like it is right now, the action camera, because not all cars have those panoramic roofs. Do you rather prefer this camera perspective here, where you look to the front, basically between me and co-driver, or do you rather like it here mounted to the side window? So if we have the possibility, I tend to put it in the against the sunroof there, because you get this rather panoramic view to the front, which is pretty cool, just looking to the front as well and have a good feeling. On the other hand, the one that is mounted then next to my head on the left side, sometimes also on the racetrack, gives you a more natural point of view impression, that it would more feel like you are driving the car yourself. So I think as for me, this one is more beautiful, but the other one maybe is a little bit more realistic. What do you think? Then leave me your comments about that. So once more into the sport mode, and the gears are turned up higher, more RPMs, also kept in a lower speed gears. 5th gear, for example, now at 100, where it would be a gear, or now 6th gear, 1 or 2 gears higher even in the normal comfort mode. Good stability here now, also in the corners with 70. Now it's really fun to drive the car also in a fast way. So if you like to go a little bit faster and have good roads available, and also want some sporty driving, although having a G-Class, then the G63 is for you. If you're more seeking for, the visual part and not paying too much money, although it's already expensive, and just using it as a cruiser then, city and also countryside, and don't attack that vehicle that hard, then the G500 will be more suitable for you. So which one would you prefer after hearing those driving impressions? I really enjoy driving it here with the G63. So, it's a tough question. Maybe I would like a G43. That could basically combine something like that, because also with E-Class or C-Class, I usually really like the 43 models of AMG, because they somehow combine the sporty driving fun and the everyday comfortable driving capability. But that one is not planned for the G-Class. They probably at some time maybe make another G65, but then I think you'll still be better off with the 63 with the V8, because the new V8 is really very well thought out, good performance, nice sound. Yeah, just I think about consumption, there's nothing we can really do. And now with some sporty driving here, 24 liters on 100 kilometers. And it was, just one really hard acceleration. Other than that, it was rather flow. So, yeah, there are a lot of performance vehicles out there, and we have been driving a lot of really powerful cars. But I think I've never experienced such a high consumption from any vehicle ever. So that's the downside of the sporty enjoyment, right? So now time to take this beast off-road. By the way, this is the automatic lock when we start driving, and the doors are locked from the inside. And the funny thing is that due to the soft suspension, you sometimes get the feeling, oh, it's an air suspension, but it's not. It's really that soft that even if we have this loose gravel here on the ground, it's not getting uncomfortable, and that's really interesting. And of course we have enough ground clearance and the all-wheel drive that we hardly feel any of this slick terrain. This one is now more the gravel roads. We can go a little bit faster there. Just have to watch out and for some bumps in the road. And soon we'll also go to the low range mode that we can go a little bit slower and take some steep uphills. So here we go. And we go to so Sven, our instructor, is accompanying us. We go there.
Left.
And to the left.
And then we prepare low range and differential.
So the funny thing here is when we go to the low range, well, at the moment we're standing still, but you can also just drive up to a speed of 40 kilometers an hour and the low range will still work. And also when you put it out again, most vehicles have to stand still, put it in neutral, but here you can also roll, and while rolling, put it in neutral, put in the low range or put it back again. That's really astonishing, so a very cool system. Shall we put in any of the differential, all three? Or two? So the central differential lock and the rear one. So then we can roll up a little bit smoother. So otherwise when we wouldn't have the differential lock activated, maybe we would have too much wheel spin at one of the wheels. And so in this way, when both wheels are locked, they turn at the same speed. We get up the hill a little bit smoother. And the thing is, you need a certain speed, but actually due to the all-wheel drive and the capabilities of the car, you just roll slowly but steadily, and that's usually the best way. So you keep on moving, but just slowly. I could also stand still, but of course that's never too good with a rather slick rock we have, for example, right here. So the key to off-road driving is usually driving slow but steady. Also, I'm putting my thumbs out of the steering wheel now, that when the steering wheel is reacting, my joints won't get ripped apart. And that always was bringing me back to the driving part on the road before, because I told you the steering is not too progressive while road driving. You can see we need this in off-road driving to be more precise, and that when the wheels are getting turned now by those rocks, the steering wheel is not being turned apart to the left or right too fast. And so when off-road driving, this helps me now that you can steer a little bit easier and smooth. You want the third differential lock as well? Here we go. And that's really cool stuff. You can put it in while driving and now it's already in. So even if you maybe forgot that first, it's actually no problem. Wow, that's really against the sun here now. And you can hardly see what's going on. But you can also have those off-road dials, either that or also the camera, and then I can check the camera image and see what's going on in front of me. Although I cannot really see for myself. Yeah, I mean that wall there in front of us, it's literally a wall, and you would say you can never ever get up there with a car.
60%.
60%
inclination.
That's really cool. And I mean, I've done that also with the Land Rover Discovery in Utah. You can also check out that review. And here with the G-Class, I have to say, it feels even easier to do. So that's a direct comparison now. It's like nothing. You know, you look at it and you say, there's no way you could ever get up there. And then the car just does it. And I mean, if I really compare it with other off-road vehicles, also maybe some off-road pickups, this one here feels actually the smoothest. You know, the transition, how the car goes up the hill is super soft and smooth. So it's no problem also for the co-drivers. Go straight, right?
Yes.
Okay. So how you are feeling here, guys? We're with 3 people in here. All comfortable, all good?
I am relaxed.
Yeah, so
Straight.
Definitely, I mean, you feel that you're off-road, that's for sure, but I think it's almost the softest way you can experience off-road driving, and you don't even have to be a very experienced off-road driver. You know, the important thing is you have to dare something, but you shouldn't dare too much. Here now you feel how the car is working underneath us. We're just driving at about like 6, 7, 8 kilometers an hour, something like that. Just the center differential lock is on now and steadily working up the hill. So if you ask me if this new generation is still off-road capable, it surely is. Have you driven the other one as well?
Yes, of course, I still do.
Here, down there?
Yes.
Down there. Well, what would you say for the difference in off-road capabilities, the previous generation and this one?
I'm really astonished, but they increase basically everything. The comfort is the most obvious one, and then we have even increased the ground clearance, the angles, and the side inclination is possible up to 35 degrees by now instead of 29, and that's due to the wider construction of the car.
Okay, cool. So, and I can just prove it, it's really is even more comfortable when off-road riding. That's also one of the key features. So one interesting thing is here when going downhill, this one here does not have a hill descent control. And you might wonder, how is that possible even? Well, it does work because when we have the low range gear reduction, we can just let it roll. I'm not on the brakes even, I can just let the car roll. And because of the low range gear reduction and just of the engine brake and everything.
Stop.
Nope.
Stop. And now you can reverse.
Reverse, okay.
And pick up your colleague.
I can try that, okay. And that's a reverse. So because all of the engine brake and stuff and differentials, the mechanical friction is that high that we do not need an electronic hill descent control. And indeed it works. And you can see even when we're going that hill down, we can just reverse and go up the hill in a reverse gear and just do it once more. And now to our conclusion for today, all new Mercedes G-Class. Well, if you compare G500 and G63, it becomes clear that this one is the more clever choice because the price, I mean, let's be honest, it is an overpriced car for sure. But then when you pay even more, maybe double the price for a G63, it doesn't really make sense. Just if you say, I really do not care about the money, then you can also just think about the G63. In general, they have indeed changed a lot with this all-new generation, so more than you can actually see. But that they remained this classic style on the exterior is also part of the concept, the same with the door closing sounds. So this is still this true icon, and I think it is on the one hand a clever choice that they have kept it. On the other hand, of course, as I've shown you, it comes with some downsides for pedestrian safety, and of course that it's sometimes not so easy to close the doors, especially when you don't have so much power. On the interior, the key element is that you have this upright high seating position, and that's really a lot of fun to drive, especially with this soft off-road suspension that you can tilt around sometimes a little bit. And of course, it's still fully off-road capable. That's also pretty interesting. I would be looking forward to get your feedback. If you're a G-Class customer, do you drive it off-road, or are you rather keeping it on the road? For sure, most vehicles will probably remain on the road overall. From the driving experience, I really had a lot of fun with it, on the one hand. On the other hand, you have to say, well, the comfort is given that you have this off-road soft suspension, yes, but the noise insulation, they have improved it if you compare it to the previous generation. But still, if you would take a modern big Mercedes SUV as a GLE or a GLS, they are more silent on the interior. You have to bear that in mind. This exterior design with the upright window in the front, it comes with some costs, and you just have to know that. If you just say, it is more important to me that the car looks the way it looks like, then you just have to bear that in mind and just have to live with some of the downsides that come also with this car. So what do you think actually? Would you go for the G500 or the G63? And what do you think in general about the concept here from the G-Class? This, on the one hand, a dinosaur, but underneath, a very modern car. So basically a very unique mixture with hardly any competition on the market. What do you think? Leave me your comments and also tune in to our next Autogefuehl episode.